stripping humanity and safety away from people is non-negotiable, right? And we should be very clear that we stand with our LGBTQ two-spirit relatives, and that we're not going to score political points, somehow trading away their rights and humanity. That is a position that I have always taken, and I am very clear. I am Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan of the great state of Minnesota, and I'm running for the United States Senate.
So what does a lieutenant governor do? I feel like everyone knows the term, but not what your job is.
Sure. So my job is to be ready, right? As sort of the biggest piece. But my daughter often says that my mom's job is to go on field trips and help people. And I think like that's actually like a pretty good description of what it is that I do. I travel across the state of Minnesota. I hear from people, their hopes, their dreams, their frustrations, and then try to bring that back to the Capitol and get to work. My background, I come from the nonprofit sector. I was a child advocate, the executive director of Children's Defense Fund, Minnesota. And so a lot of my expertise comes from policy work around family economic security. So childcare, paid family and medical leave, housing. And those are the policy areas that I've been really active. I oversee the Advisory Committee on Capital Area Security, the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board. I'm the chair of our Interagency Council on Homelessness. But really, it is summed up by my job is to go on field trips and help people. And that's the assessment of a 12-year-old, and I think it's accurate.
That sounds a lot like what the job of the senator is too.
Well, yes. And so, maybe with a little bit larger scope, but I think I've got some good skills that I can put into action and just keep building.
So what is your proudest achievement as lieutenant governor, or before that?
Wow. Well, I would say a couple things. I think my proudest achievement as an advocate and as the executive director of Children's Defense Fund Minnesota was I was co-chaired the Raise the Wage campaign, where we increased minimum wage to $9.50 and indexed it to inflation, which means that every year since 2014 we have seen an increase in the minimum wage every January. And we know that, of course, we had to catch up to keep up, and they haven't increased the minimum wage in Washington in over 16 years. And so, that's something that I feel really proud of. And I remember during that fight, which frankly was a little harder than it should have been, because we had a democratically controlled House, Senate, and governor's office. But there was one night when we thought we were going to have to frankly give up either the amount or the indexing. And I called my mom, and she said, "Peggy, I wish that there was someone like you advocating on behalf of our family when we were coming up." She's like, "You stick to it, you push back, you need to fight for families like ours." And we did, and we won. And so that remains one of the things that I am most proud of. And then I would say, we are getting ready to implement paid family and medical leave here in Minnesota. And I think a lot about, I was a new mom with a little kiddo right on my hip when we first launched Minnesotans for paid family and medical leave. And that bill was signed into law when my daughter was in fourth grade. So that sort of gives you a sense, right, of the arc, but it also, I think, means that, you get what you organize for. We have done a good job of building coalitions, building support, perfecting the policy. And so then once, we had the right butts in the seats, right, in the legislature and the governor's office, we went for it because what we have heard over and over again is that families should not have to choose between caring for a new child, a sick loved one, themselves, right, and a paycheck. So I'm excited for that program to go into effect in January, and I'm pretty proud of that work.
Would you be if you get into the Senate, would you be trying to bring these to the national level, and how would you do that?
I mean, absolutely, right? I think that these are overwhelmingly popular positions, right? People need livable wages. And we, like I said, it's been 16 years. Boy, do we have to catch up. I think we've heard a lot about $15, right? $15 should be the floor. When we think about the
Right.
incredible costs, right, that are facing individuals, one good job should be enough. And I think that there are a lot of folks, regardless of their political party or affiliation, who agree with that sentiment. And I am eager to work with people to get that done. And, sometimes we hear from folks, oh, there's so many different checkerboarded paid family leave policies across the country. It's so hard for like larger companies. And I hear that. And so let's make it easy. And we'll just have one good comprehensive policy at the national level that everybody can follow. We are one of the, few developed nations in the entire world that doesn't have that available to folks. And, it's about two generation strategies for families, also about bonding, healthy child development, and I think is something again that's overwhelmingly popular. Those are the kinds of things that I'd like to work on in Washington, D.C.
Do you think that Minnesota is going far enough with these, or do you wish that you would be going even further?
Well, I think right now, there's we see every January this increase in the wage, and I do think there's more that we need to do on the national level. Some municipalities have also taken upon themselves to increase the wage, and again, I think it's because it's time. I think we need the federal level, the federal government to take action, and I'm eager to do that. And I'm really proud of this policy that we're about to implement in Minnesota. It is. Of course, we looked at other states across the country. We worked with advocates, small businesses, and different policymakers. And so I think what we are rolling out in January is a good one. And, I'm always open to making things better. I think, policy at one point in time, right, always deserves a little bit of inspection. If we can make it better, we should. But, we should see how it's working first. And then again, try to push for people to be able to afford the lives they want to live at the national level. I'm proud of what we've done here in Minnesota. We certainly could use a little more Minnesota in Washington.
Oh yeah. How do you talk with the Republican? Because your state is pretty split, especially in the the legislature. It's literally split. How do you talk to Republicans and get them to see eye to eye with you on issues like this and other things?
Well, I think, one of the things, when I was with Children's Defense Fund, sometimes my colleagues on my side of the aisle, Democrats or DFLers, as we're called here in Minnesota, would get a little frustrated with me because I would have Republicans author our bills. I'd say 2 years in the life of a child is a really long time. We can't wait until the next biennium to move on these policies. So finding that common ground and finding leaders who are in the majority to author these bills, I think really matters. We're not going to agree on everything, but in that example, right, one of the things that we worked with was making sure that we had healthy babies of incarcerated mothers, right, and that is a place where we can find common ground. I love having coffee with people. I love building relationships, and that is how you get that done. We might not ever agree, but I think, especially in this moment, we need to turn down the rhetoric and be able to find the humanity in others and determine if there are places of common ground. I also think, right, that there are people on both sides of the aisle who care about people making a living wage. I think there's people who care about making sure folks have access to housing and childcare. And we can do that work. It might be a little harder these days, but I still have hope.
How would you communicate with Republicans in the Senate? I mean, if you're in the Senate, you'd have to do this in the Senate, and
Sure.
they seem a lot less willing to do this. But also, how would you convince your supporters who probably are like bipartisanship? No way that this is what needs to be done.
So I am fairly pragmatic. I care about getting results. I care about celebrating those results too along the way. I think that's important, and it's important to our movement. But the way that I've done that here in Minnesota again is just building those relationships, right? Like sometimes folks are like, what's the first thing that you're going to do when you get to the Senate? And the real answer is, I'm going to ask folks to have a meeting with me, right? I'm going to ask my colleagues, right, to sit down, because I think that that still matters. Now, does that mean that we roll over on things that we care about? Does that mean that we allow the humanity of others to be discarded and stepped upon? Absolutely not. But it does mean that, if we can encourage some of our colleagues to remember that they are a co-equal branch of government and that they have power and authority and should use that to make sure that the executive branch isn't just running away with it at the federal level. I think that that's important. So, I am not there yet, but based on the work that I've been able to do here and just, I'm an extrovert. And so spending that time getting to know folks and making sure, that they're like, I don't know about her. And then we're able to sit down, build that relationship. And they're like, oh, shit, I like her. Like that's the goal. Right. And that's the work that I've been able to do. And the work that I'm eager to do in Washington.
Is there anyone that like you see them talk or something and you're like, wow, if I get there, that's someone who I want to have coffee with day one, or I want to set up a meeting with?
If I can be really honest, I think, Senator Also Brooks is, she is a Democrat, but also someone that I've really admired the way that she's campaigned, the way that she's led. And so would love to sit down with her. Some of these other members of the Senate I've started building relationships with, of course, one of my nearest and dearest is Senator Elizabeth Warren. And so I know we will be working very closely together. But I am open. It is, there's a 100 folks. And so there's an opportunity, right, to actually build real relationships there. And I think that's important. And I think the Senate is one of those places where that's still possible.
Yeah. I'm not sure I agree that it's still possible, but I'm glad you do.
I'm going to work on it.
So, why are you running for Senate? What makes you want to go national?
Sure. So, growing up, I felt like the bottom could fall out at any moment. And there are too many people right now who feel that way. I was a kid who relied on SNAP, or back in the day we called food stamps, right, to keep food on the table. We'd go to the food shelf and I'd carry a box of commodity cheese under my arm like a football, right? And Medicaid was my healthcare. I was a kid with really severe asthma coming up, and it saved my life. And so I think that we need more people with lived experience who are serving in the Senate. I think this big baloney, like big ugly bill that just passed wouldn't have passed if there were more people who actually relied on the foundations, right, of food and medical care, who are serving in office. And I just say, like, I also love Minnesota. And I am willing to throw down and to fight for the people here. And representing Minnesota as a lieutenant governor has been the honor of my lifetime. And I think that I've got a good skill set, some great relationships, and I'm highly qualified, and can also do that work in the U.S. Senate.
Speaking of speaking for the people and the people who need it the most, how would you handle the things where there are a lot of people who think that like Democrats are throwing trans people under the bus, Democrats are throwing people of color under the bus. Like how would you handle, or how are you handling those not allegations, but the way that people are worried and freaking out, and how would you make them feel like they belong and like they are seen and heard?
Sure. So regardless of what my occupation is, so if I'm the lieutenant governor, if I'm a senator, if I'm a nonprofit leader, my vocation is the same. It's to make sure that people are seen, heard, valued, protected, and believed. I will continue to do that work. I would say, like I said earlier, stripping humanity and safety away from people is non-negotiable. right? And we should be very clear that we stand with our LGBTQ two-spirit relatives, and that we're not going to score political points, somehow trading away their rights and humanity. That is a position that I have always taken, and I am very clear. I'm not running to make history, but it is about time that we had a Native American woman in the U.S. Senate. That is a lens and experience that has never been there before. And I think that that matters. I think democracy functions best when it accurately reflects the community it seeks to represent. And so, I have done that work for a very long time. I have remembered who I am and where I come from, and will continue to do that work for all Minnesotans. No one should be discarded, and we shouldn't throw people away when we think it's politically expedient. Like if
What
that's politics, I'm not interested in that kind of politics.
What do you think you can bring to the table as a Native American woman? What do you think that you will be able to bring to Congress that hasn't been there before, even though I know you're not doing it to be the first, but you are. So what will you be able to bring that isn't there right now?
Well, I think, the work that we've been able to do here in Minnesota, we have established a tribal state relations office. We have very strong government to government relationships with the 11 Native nations who share their geography with Minnesota. We've done a considerable amount around language revitalization, missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, focusing on curriculum that is accurate and talks about the people who have always lived in Minnesota and who continue to live here. And I think to be honest, right, the federal government has never fully lived up to honoring treaty rights and trust responsibilities. So that should be the floor. And I would expect, this seat has long been held by senators who serve on the Indian Affairs Committee, Senator Paul Wellstone, Senator Al Franken, Senator Tina Smith, and that has been part of the work here. I think having a Native woman at the table speaking directly and someone who has deep relationships with tribes across the country is needed and necessary. It is so clear to me that tribes are an incredibly important part, right, of our states, of our country, of our economy, and that is the work that I have done, and bringing that experience to the United States Senate is something that I am very, very eager to do. And I know as well, right, in my community, the way that I've been taught is that we care for our elders. We make sure that we are investing and caring for our children. Those are important perspectives that I think benefit all people, not just Native folks. And I'm excited to be able to potentially do that work.
You mentioned the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives office. I have heard that you were the one who created that. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So this is actually one of those great examples of, bipartisan approach to policy. When I was first lieutenant governor, the governor and I had a meeting with Senator Paul Gazelka, who was the Republican majority leader, and I had actually heard him talking about seeing the movie Wind River. He was on a public radio in an interview, and he's like, "I had no idea that any of this was happening, and it's concerning to me." So in that meeting, I said, "I heard your interview. I would love to see if working on missing and murdered Indigenous women's issues would be something where we could collaborate." And he said yes. So we worked through our first session together. There was a lot of back and forth and negotiations. And I remember late into the night, there were spreadsheets that were being passed back and forth to each other. And he said, "This missing and murdered Indigenous women's task force, this is important to me and to the lieutenant governor. This needs to stay in." We signed that bill into law. There was bipartisan leadership. There were advocates. There were survivors. There was law enforcement. And what came out of that task force was the creation of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office, which is the first of its kind state-based office in the country. And this is a place where, frankly, we have seen under the Trump administration them roll back a lot of the funding and portals and opportunities for violence prevention work. when our women and our two-spirit relatives experience violence and go missing and are murdered at much higher rates than a general population, this work needs to continue to be invested in, and something that I will continue to support both here in Minnesota, but absolutely at the national level. This crisis is not over, even if you pretend it is and take everything off of the website.
Yeah, it's horrible how much has been removed and how they think that it's able to happen and that they can just get rid of it all.
That's right. And we're not going to be quiet about it.
So, one last question, because this is Minnesota, so I have to ask. Ken Martin was the head of the DFL, and now he's the head of the chair of the DNC. So, can you say one thing that people should know about Ken Martin and how he fights?
I can. So Ken Martin was my first campaign manager when I ran for the school board in 2004. He gave me my first paid job on a campaign, and I have watched him build incredible coalitions. But the most important thing you need to know about Ken Martin is that he was next to my mom's bedside when she was dying,
Wow.
and she adored him, and she would call him and give him lots of helpful advice over the years. And he's just a very, very good man. And I know he has an incredibly tall order in front of him in this moment. But I am grateful for his leadership and his friendship. But mostly, I'm grateful for how he loved my mom.
Well, that's, I think, a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. And we will have to talk earrings at some point.
I'm totally in. Yes, we will absolutely do that for sure.
Have a fantastic rest of your day, and thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with me.
Thanks so much for all you do.
All right, bye.